Hello, I'm Claire Smith and welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a perfume tag. I've been tagged by the lovely Yamina A, and she's tagged me to do Lavishly Shishi's perfume tag, which is called the Solo Dolo tag. So Solo Dolo, if you don't know, which I didn't, means to do things on your own in your own way. So this tag tries to highlight those fragrances in your collection where you only own one from that particular fragrance house or brand. So I actually checked my collection. I realised that I had maybe about 30 or more fragrances where I only own one from that brand. So I'm going to limit this video to 15. And I've realised there are sort of two reasons why I might own only one from that brand. And one reason is that I truly only own one from that brand and I've only ever owned that one fragrance from that brand. The other sort of situation is that I've owned multiple fragrances from that brand, but I've ended up decluttering them or using them up, and that's the only one I've got left. So I've got both in this video, and I'm going to divide this video into these two categories. But I'm also going to tag a few people to continue doing this tag. So I'm going to tag Scented Snowdrops John, also Naturally Liz, and also I'm going to tag Perfumes, Perfume Perceptions. So I'm going to link all of their channels down below, along with Yamina A and also with Lavishly Shishi. If you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire Smith. I make videos all about perfume, perfume science, perfume history, perfume psychology even, and I also just do these fun perfume tags too. So if you haven't seen me before and you are interested, then please do consider subscribing. And also if you like this kind of content, then please press the like button. So let's get on with this. So the first category are really the ones where I've only owned one fragrance from these brands ever. I've never had any others. So the first fragrance is one from All Saints and it's called Metal Waves. So in this original line, I think there were 5 different fragrances, and then All Saints seemed to bring out a few more, and then they've not really brought out much recently. So I don't know whether they've stopped making fragrances or whether they're going to start again. But this is from the original line. So this one, Metal Wave, is a woody vanilla fragrance, but it definitely has this feeling of pencil shavings. It smells almost like you're smelling the lead of the pencil shaving and the woody part of the pencil shaving. It makes me think of IKEA clean lined apartments. It makes me think of blonde woods. It almost has something in it that smells like a dry but sweet tobacco. The vanilla here is very green and it's very soft, and it's something that's quite neutral and not overly sweet. It is a little bit sweet. It's not savoury by any means, but it's definitely not a gourmand leaning vanilla. And it feels quite a casual, neutral fragrance just overall. I think the reason I don't have more from this line is just sort of my opportunity really. I do remember really enjoying Flora Mortis from this same line, and I think if I were to get another one, I would probably get Flora Mortis. But I think the one that people tend to talk about is really Sunset Riot from this line, because that was the Baccarat Rouge dupe and Baccarat Rouge was everywhere at the time. But yeah, I would recommend Flora Mortis and Metal Wave from All Saints. I think they're both really nice fragrances. So that's Metal Wave by All Saints. So the next fragrance is one that was really hyped back in 2020, and this one is Zadig and Voltaire's This Is Her. So this fragrance, if you haven't tried it, is a peppery, sweet, creamy, milky, lactonic, sandalwood vanilla fragrance. And I think this one is extremely divisive. There are people who absolutely love this and there are people who really can't stand it. I think the people who really love this because it's huggy, it's enveloping, it's strong, it's long lasting, and yeah, it's a really cosy fragrance. But I think the people who hate this associate it with off milk and find it very synthetic. I can kind of see both sides of the argument. Personally, on the second day after I've had some clothes on and I've worn this, I can smell something that I think smells a little bit like off milk. So I think I get what people mean by that kind of impression of it. But I do find this very huggy and delicious personally. So I think the reason why I don't own more from Zadig and Voltaire is just the opportunity to try these fragrances here in the UK. You very rarely see a tester bottle in a shop that you can just pick up and spray. And I think really the only fragrance that I've seen described on YouTube was one that Chantal Tiffany absolutely loved from this brand, and it was called Girls Can Be Crazy. And yeah, that made me really want to try that fragrance, her talking about that one, because she described it as a spicy cola and it just sounded really delicious. But yeah, I never got a chance to try that one and I'm not blind buying it. So this is the only one I own from Zadig and Voltaire, and it's This Is Her. So the next fragrance is one from Floral Street, and I think Floral Street was about the first niche brand that I ever really tried. And I bought loads of sample sets from Floral Street, and I really enjoyed trying those. And I even made a video all about the different fragrances from Floral Street. So the one I finally chose after doing all that sampling was Ylang Ylang Espresso. And Ylang Ylang Espresso is a very distinctive, very rich, very deep fragrance. Really not something that I think everybody is going to like. It's something that has a really strong coffee opening, but it's a boozy coffee with some whiskey. And it also then has some rose syrup. And the rose syrup is accompanied by a rich ylang ylang. I would say the rose is definitely more prominent over the ylang ylang, weirdly, considering the name. But as this dries down, it turns into a more powdery rose almost, a rose dusted with cocoa powder. And there's also some patchouli along with that coffee. I think I chose this fragrance because even though I really liked a few from this house, I remember liking, for example, Chypre Sublime, Iris Goddess, and also Wild Vanilla Orchid. There were just other fragrances in my collection at the time that overlapped those other fragrances, whereas this one felt more distinctive to me. So yeah, I don't think I would actively look out for another Floral Street fragrance. I think I'm perfectly happy with this one, but I think, you know, if my fragrance collection does change over time, I wouldn't say no to a bottle of Chypre Sublime or a bottle of Wild Vanilla Orchid or a bottle of Iris Goddess. I think they're all beautiful fragrances. So that's Ylang Ylang Espresso by Floral Street. So the next fragrance brand is Elizabeth Arden, and I only own Elizabeth Arden's Fifth Avenue Royale. So this one was hyped a lot on YouTube a few years ago, and I remember sort of resisting buying it because for some reason I thought I wouldn't enjoy it. I don't know why. Anyway, this is a raspberry tinged boozy suede fragrance with a sort of slightly more resinous leathery feel in the dry down, but really it's quite a linear fragrance overall. It's something that lasts, you know, a decent amount of time. You could wear it on a night out. I think Elizabeth Arden are a really affordable brand, and I think it's something that before I bought this, I had a preconception about what an Elizabeth Arden fragrance smelled like. I think mainly because my grandmother always wore blue grass, and I thought that, you know, Elizabeth Arden fragrances were old-fashioned, I guess, in a way. But really that's not true at all. And when you think about how famous some of their fragrances are, like green tea, white tea, you know, Red Door, for example, they're super popular, and fragrances are generally popular for a reason. It's usually because they're quite good. So yeah, I would not hesitate to try more from Elizabeth Arden. I have tried sunflowers, and I also really enjoyed trying Mediterranean. I think Mediterranean is probably the favourite of the ones that I've tried, but I would really love to try green tea and also white tea as well. So that's Elizabeth Arden Fifth Avenue Royale. The next fragrance brand is Coach, and I only own one from Coach, and this one is Coach EDP. So this fragrance, I remember when I went to buy another fragrance, there was an offer on, and I could get another fragrance for, I think it was something ridiculous like £5 or something. It was not a lot of money anyway, and it seemed silly not to get another one. And ironically, I've actually decluttered the fragrance that I went to buy on that occasion, and I've kept this one. I really like this fragrance. I don't wear it that often, as you can see from this bottle. I've had this a few years, and you know, if you look at the dent, it's not huge. I tend to wear this one in spring, so I think I will be reaching for this in the next few months. But it's really nice for work in spring, this one. So this is a raspberry and rose and suede fragrance, much like the Elizabeth Arden really, but without the booziness and without that sort of more dark leather kind of feel to it. This one definitely is lighter on the suede than the Elizabeth Arden, and it's a muskier base really. I think this one's just really clean and really sparkly, and whilst it is, you know, a very kind of pretty girl kind of aesthetic fragrance, I do think it's probably more interesting than a lot of fragrances in this kind of genre actually, because of that suedey musk in the dry down. This one's incredibly long lasting, and I've got absolutely no complaints for my very little money that I spent on this one. I have tried others from this same line. I think Wild Rose was quite popular, but it just wasn't for me because it had this kind of Baccarat Rouge vibe in the dry down that I wasn't particularly loving. But the opening was fine. I think, you know, the Coach Dreams line and things like that, they just haven't really attracted me. But I'm perfectly happy having just this one fragrance from Coach, and I don't really feel like I need more in my life. I don't feel like Coach is in general a brand that I would absolutely love to own more fragrances from, but this one is really pretty. So this is Coach EDP. So the next fragrance brand is Jo Malone. So this fragrance I got for free last year. Jo Malone were doing some kind of weird offer on Instagram where they gave away 30ml bottles of their fragrance. I mean, I don't understand how that's a business model, but clearly it works for them. So I chose Pomegranate Noir out of the 3 they were advertising. I think they had English Pear and Freesia, and they had Lime and Basil. I think it was Lime and Basil. Anyway, so I went for Pomegranate Noir, and I had absolutely no intentions of buying a Jo Malone fragrance. I tried a few Jo Malone fragrances in the past. I tried Myrrh and Tonka. I tried English Pear and Freesia and not really got on with those. So Pomegranate Noir, actually, when I got it, it surprised me that I enjoyed it quite as much as I do. This one is a very clove heavy fragrance, but it has this kind of dry fruitiness in the background as well. And in the dry down, it smells almost like you're walking by an autumn hedgerow where the leaves are on the ground and you've got that kind of almost sort of vegetation kind of smell in the background, but with that kind of smell of the dry leaves as well. It's a very sort of autumnal, Christmassy kind of scent to me, this one. I have worn this once in January this year so far, but I can't say it's one that I reach for a lot, really. I'm open to trying other fragrances from Jo Malone. I just haven't really had the opportunity, but yeah, I mean, people absolutely love Jo Malone, don't they? So I think I'd really like to try some of the deeper, darker ones in the darker bottles, the black bottles, see if there's anything there that I really enjoy. But yeah, really like Pomegranate Noir and really happy to have a free bottle of it. So that's Pomegranate Noir by Jo Malone. So the next fragrance brand that I only own one from is Elizabeth and James, and this is Nirvana Amethyst. So Nirvana Amethyst is really quite a simple note profile. It's basically a sweet vanilla and tobacco fragrance, but it has this kind of honeyed feel to it, almost like this honeysuckle or something sort of a little bit creamy but sweet there as well. I think this fragrance really stands out as something that's really great for the price that this fragrance was sold at. And I remember when I bought this fragrance, I was debating between a number of different ones because I hadn't smelt any of them. This was a blind buy. I actually had to buy this from Fragrance X and get it shipped from America as well. I just could not find this fragrance for a decent price in the UK. They were all really expensive. I was debating between Bourbon and also I think Black as well. And I plumped for Amethyst just because I thought it was the one that I was most likely to enjoy. But I would really like to try the other ones in this range as well. And I just think that this range is probably really, really good. And I feel like I've missed out on it really, but I didn't want to blind buy like 5 different fragrances just so I could say that I've tried the Nirvana range. But yeah, I'm really pleased to own this one. So this is Nirvana Amethyst by Elizabeth and James. So the next fragrance brand that I only own one from is Cerruti, and this is Cerruti 1881, and I remember being totally obsessed with this fragrance before I bought it. I just could not go in a store and there'd be a bottle of this and me not pick it up and spray it. There's something about this one that I find completely addictive, and whilst it is just a floral musk fragrance, it's not like any other floral musk that I've ever smelt. It's kind of fresh but also powdery, so it's got mimosa, it's got chamomile, and it's also got a very pink smelling rose in it. But there's so many other things going on in this fragrance, and there's also a kind of slightly dirty musk, but it's a slightly dirty musk in a 90s kind of way, and it's a very smooth fragrance as well. There's no sort of sharp edges at all in this one. It's just very easy to wear, it's really long lasting, and it's something that whilst being wearable is still interesting and is really affordable too. I think this is just the type of fragrance that a lot of people like. This is a mass appealing floral fragrance, but with a twist. So I think the reason I only own one from this brand is just that Cerruti don't seem to have that many fragrances in the mainstream kind of arena. I've never seen any other Cerruti fragrances other than male marketed ones on shelves. And I've never thought to pick up any Cerruti fragrances. I've never heard of any other Cerruti fragrances apart from maybe Image. I would be open to trying more from Cerruti, but I think, this was probably a one-off from Cerruti for me. So this is Cerruti 1881. So next, let's look at the fragrances that I've created as singles. So I've had more from this particular brand, but I've either decluttered fragrances or I have used fragrances up, meaning that I only have one in my collection at the moment. So the first fragrance in this other category is a Rose 4 by Floris. I was just looking for a rose oud that wasn't super sweet. That's why I bought this one. It was a blind buy and I'd never tried anything from Floris before. And this one really shocked me when I first tried it because the oud is really not prominent at all. In fact, if I didn't know there was oud here, I'm not sure I would pick it out actually. So this is a very pink feeling rose fragrance. A very fresh rose, and it's actually got this sort of resinous woody feel, a woody feeling patchouli. As this dries down, it begins to make me think of rosé wine soaked corks. It is quite a strong fragrance, but it's quite close to skin, but you still get wafts of it throughout the day, and it's just quite a long lasting one. I think me enjoying this fragrance made me want to try more from Floris, and I thought, you know, I've been lucky with this one blind buy, I'll try another blind buy from Floris. And that was a complete mistake because I bought White Rose. So White Rose was reputedly the fragrance that was worn by the late Queen on her wedding day. And there was something about White Rose that I really didn't like, and I ended up decluttering that one. But I am pretty open to trying other fragrances from Floris. I've tried Honey Oud, I really like that one. I'd be open to buying a bottle of that as well. I just think Floris are quite expensive, and I think I've learnt my lesson with blind buying bottles of their fragrances. But yeah, I'm open to trying others from Floris for sure. So that's a Rose 4 by Floris. So the next brand that I only own one from is Lattafa. And Lattafa are a brand that I've had a few fragrances from. I've definitely tried lots of fragrances from them in sample form. But in bottles, I've also bought Opulent Musk and Shake El Shook Luxe Edition. And Opulent Musk, I think the sprayer broke and I ended up using that as a room spray, but I didn't particularly like that one anyway. And then Shake El Shook Luxe Edition, I actually just resold because I didn't enjoy that one either. And this one is really the only success that I've had with Lattafa out of all of the ones that I've tried samples of and the ones that I've bought as well. And even this one has things about it that I'm not so sure about, which you would expect for something that's, you know, £10-12. You're not expecting a really super duper fragrance for that kind of money. But it does have its upsides as well. And I do think this one's an interesting fragrance. So this, to me, smells a little bit spiced to begin with. It sort of reminds me of the tops of egg custards almost. It's got that sort of little bit gourmand kind of feel about it. It's a vanilla fragrance really overall. It's a sugary vanilla fragrance, but with a sort of slightly nutty feel. And there's also some leatheriness to this as well. And it just feels quite resinous and woody too. It's a really sort of syrupy, deep vanilla kind of fragrance, very much like the colour of this liquid actually. I think this one is incredibly long lasting. It's incredibly strong as well. It's definitely like one of those stealth fragrances that you stop smelling, but you can knock out a room very easily with. I think this fragrance is actually pretty amazing value for how much they sell these fragrances for. So yeah, I'm open to trying new ones from Lattafa, but I'm not going to blind buy any. So that's Lattafa Amir Al Oud Intense Oud. So the next fragrance is one from a house where I've actually used up 3 other fragrances from this house, but this is the last one that I have standing, so technically I only have one from this fragrance house. So this is Sarah Jessica Parker's Stash. So I finished bottles of Covet Pure Bloom and also Lovely from Sarah Jessica Parker, and I have to say, I think Stash is actually my favourite of her fragrances. And this is a 100ml bottle, and you can see it doesn't look like I've used a lot there, does it? But actually this is an incredibly strong fragrance and it lasts the whole day. It's not something you need a lot of. So actually I have worn this quite a lot. So this one is a very woody fragrance really. I think it sort of hinges around grapefruit in the opening. I do sense a bit of the sage as well, but I'm not sure whether I just sense that because I see it in the notes. But I think it's a little bit sagey too. And it has a resinous feel, but it's really the pepper that dominates in the dry down. It's a very peppery, woody fragrance in the dry down. I think this fragrance got a lot of hype on YouTube, didn't it? And I think people genuinely love this one. I think it's seen as a classic now. I would be open to trying more fragrances from Sarah Jessica Parker, but I feel like I've explored most of her range now. I think the only ones that I'm really interested in trying now are really the flankers of Stash, because I've heard they're quite different to Stash. Yeah, I haven't ventured there yet, so that's Stash by SJP. So the next house that I only own one from is Chloe, and this is Nomad. So Nomad is a fragrance that I generally wear to work, and you can see that I've nearly finished this bottle. So this fragrance is a kind of citrusy, woody, fresh fragrance to begin with. It smells almost alpine to me in the beginning. As this dries down, you get more of the rose. It's a very fresh feeling pink rose. The rose is quite background though to the rest of the fragrance. And it also gets a bit soapy almost. I think the oak moss probably makes it soapy, and also the freesia in this fragrance. As this dries down further, it turns more into a citrusy musk, a citrusy woody musk in the dry down. And it makes me think of log cabins in the dry down. I think this fragrance is really good because it's very long lasting. It's really quite strong. And it's something that is just really fresh and very clean throughout, really. I would be open to trying other fragrances from Chloe. I did have and finish a bottle of Chloe Low, which was a fragrance that smelled a bit like rose lemonade. I did really like that one, but it's a very different feel to the Nomad line. And I think it's discontinued. You can't get that fragrance anymore. I think really with Nomad, I'm interested in the new flanker fragrance that's just coming out. So I think it's called Nuit d'Egypte, and it's supposed to have notes of myrrh, also something called kifi, which I don't actually know what that is, and also broom flower. So I'm really interested to try that one, and I could possibly buy that one. But yeah, this one's nearly gone and I have really enjoyed it. So that's Chloe Nomad. So the next brand is Givenchy, and this fragrance is L'Entité Rouge, and I bought this one back in November. It's probably one of my more recent fragrance buys. So this fragrance, I've been looking at this line for ages and I didn't know which one to choose because they all seemed a bit of a muchness, but I went for Rouge in the end just because I thought I liked that one the best and I thought I'd wear that one the most. So I really like the Intense as well, the black one, and also the Jasmine, but again, I just don't feel like I need more than one from this line at once. So this is a spicy tuberose fragrance. The spice is coming from some warmth and also from some ginger in this fragrance. But really the dry down is quite creamy. It has sandalwood and it also has some vanilla, a huge dose of vanilla, but along with that spicy tuberose still sticking around. This to me in the dry down can smell a little bit malty even, almost like a fermented grain or like a drink of Horlicks almost, if you've ever seen Horlicks. I find it really comforting as well as quite, sexy and attractive, really, this fragrance. I think Givenchy as a brand is generally a brand that I really appreciate. I've tried a lot of their fragrances. I've tried the male marketed fragrances. I've tried their other lines, and I can't say that there's any particular fragrance that I've disliked from Givenchy. Having said that, I did used to own Givenchy Very Irresistible Intense, and I ended up decluttering that one because that fragrance made me smell like straight up bourbon whiskey, and I didn't think that was a good look at work. But I think as well that was a rollable fragrance, and I think if it had been a spray, I probably would have kept that fragrance. So yeah, I've got absolutely no problems with Givenchy. I think they're a really good fragrance house. I would be open to trying more from them and possibly buying another fragrance from them in future. So that's Givenchy L'Entité Rouge. So the next brand is Paco Rabanne, and I only own Ultraviolet from Paco Rabanne. And I bought this one after seeing Ruby Zion talk about this in a sort of reference to her nostalgia about this fragrance from her youth. And she just made it sound so good that I ended up trying to find the vintage formulation so I could experience the same thing as her. And I completely agree, it does have this sort of very delicious, sweet-like dry down. So this opens quite spicy almost. It's got pepper and there's also a very dusty feeling rose in the opening. The opening's quite loud and quite a lot. But as this dries down, it turns into a very fuzzy violet, a very fuzzy, warm violet fragrance with a lovely warm patchouli amber base. I think this fragrance really, I like it after it's calmed down. I like it when it's about 3-4 hours in. And actually this is pretty much eternal. If you want to smell this fragrance 2-3 days later, you will do because it's so long lasting. This one you don't need very much either. It's very, very strong. I think Paco Rabanne as a house are a house that I've not really enjoyed in general. I did used to own Lady Million, which I was gifted for my birthday a few years back, and I ended up decluttering that one because it just didn't feel like me. It felt very golden and very loud, and it's just something that was a bit over the top and not matching my personality really. So I ended up decluttering that one. I have tried other fragrances from Paco Rabanne. I've tried all the Lady Million flankers. I've tried Pure Excess. I used to own Black Excess from Paco Rabanne, which I finished a bottle of, but I can't say I really enjoyed that fragrance that much. I have also tried Fame, which I found quite generic. So I think Paco Rabanne are just not a house that I really enjoy, and I can't see me buying any more from them. But I do really like Ultraviolet. So that's Ultraviolet by Paco Rabanne. So the next fragrance house that I only own one from is Agent Provocateur. And Agent Provocateur, I have Fatale Entente. I used to have the original Agent Provocateur fragrance, the one in the pink bottle, the EDP. And I would say for a beginner, that fragrance is quite heavy going because it's quite a dirty musk kind of fragrance, a dirty patchouli kind of fragrance as well. And it's quite a lot. It's very, very strong. But that one I ended up finishing the bottle of, and so I moved on to this one. And this one was getting a lot of hype again in lockdown, and it's something that I think a lot of people either love or hate again. I guess this is just the mark of a good fragrance, isn't it? Something that's quite divisive. So I think the people who don't like this one think it's quite plasticky, and I get that. It does have a vinyl feel about it, but I really like this one. I think this makes me think of Halloween. It makes me think of people dressed up for Halloween. It also makes me think of fairgrounds because it's quite sweet-like. So this kind of opens with something that smells more like a ginger biscuit, and it also smells a little bit like strawberry laces and licorice sweets. It has this kind of vinyl smoothness to it, and it also makes me think of cherry chapsticks, just that kind of general sort of fun, sweet flavours kind of smell to it really. This one is really famous because in the opening it's supposed to have a chili note, and it does. It has like a really hot, spicy feel to it. But I wouldn't say, if you don't like chili, this is something to avoid either, because really the hot spiciness just plays into that sweetness, and it's just a really interesting playoff. I think this fragrance really, for the price of it, which I think at the time was about a £10, £12, it's a bargain. I think this one's really, really good, and I've worn it to work quite recently. Really enjoyed it, and it lasts the whole day as well. It's really strong, long-lasting fragrance, at least on me. I would be really open to trying more from Agent Provocateur. I think the two fragrances I've tried from them have been really, really interesting. But I know that Agent Provocateur have discontinued their fragrance line, so they're getting harder and harder to find. But yeah, I would have no qualms about trying some more Agent Provocateur because I think they're really good. So that's Agent Provocateur Fatale Entente. So that's the final fragrance and the final brand in this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, then please press the like button, and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please let me know what your own collection's like. Do you have a very brand loyal collection? Or are you someone who has loads of random fragrances from loads of random brands? What do you prefer? So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.